Did Max Verstappen intentionally hit George Russell, and was the 10-second time penalty that the stewards gave Verstappen enough of a penalty? 3 takeaways following the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's start right there with the Max Verstappen and George Russell incident and whether or not it was intentional. And yes, I think it was. I haven't seen Max do something like this in quite some time. It actually reminds me of a few other incidents that were similar, like Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton quite a few years ago back in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And then also, on top of that, it also reminds me of Michael Schumacher when he hit Jacques Villeneuve in the 1997 F1 championship. And obviously there are others as well that we can add to this list. Those were just a few that really just jump out at the top of my mind. But Verstappen had red mist in this one. Very, very frustrated, consumed by it. And if we just go through it, the team putting him on new hard tires during the safety car restart. Then you had that massive save that Verstappen had coming out of the last turn. Then you had Leclerc bumping into Verstappen on the start-finish straightaway. And then after that, you had George Russell just absolutely sending one down the inside. And the two of them obviously made contact there as well. Then you had Verstappen's race engineer, Jean-Pierre Lambiase, on the radio telling Verstappen to give the position to George Russell, and Verstappen arguing back and forth. I mean, when you boil it all down, that looked like one frustrated driver, no question about it. And it certainly looked like payback for George Russell hitting him in turn 1 and Max just showing him his frustrations. For the 10-second time penalty that Max had gotten, I'd seen online and heard from some people that they felt that it wasn't enough. And I can see why some people would think that it wasn't enough. But look outside of that, because the stewards slapped him with 3 penalty points on his super license for that incident with Russell. He's now up to 11 penalty points for the current 12-month period. So we're going back to 2024. He is 1 point away from a 1-race ban now. Okay, 2 points expire off of his license on June 30th. So he's got to keep it clean until then. It is extremely easy to pick up penalty points on your super license. But outside of all that, he's going to have to keep it clean once those 2 penalty points come off at June 30th. He's going to have to keep it clean as well up until October, the end of October. So if we go through the list, so everything in the 12-month period, I got a list of it here going back to June 2024. So he picked up 2 penalty points at the Austrian Grand Prix back in June 2024 for the contact between himself and Lando Norris when they were heading up the hill to turn 3 or turn 4, I believe it was, when those two made contact. So he got 2 penalty points for that. Then at the Mexico Grand Prix, he got another 2 penalty points. Again, an incident involving himself and Lando Norris. Then he had 1 penalty point in Brazil. He had another penalty point in Qatar. That was for impeding George Russell in qualifying. Then at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, he had 2 penalty points slapped on him for his collision with Oscar Piastri. Then today, the 3 penalty points for his collision with George Russell. So it's like I was saying, look, he's got to keep it clean until the end of June, or he could face a 1-race ban. I mean, this is also on top of all that, this incident that happened, a hindrance to Verstappen's championship chase. And we have to take a look at, the frustrations not only as the, driver to driver, but the frustrations from the driver to the team. And this has to be takeaway 2, is that, obviously there is frustrations with both, with him being frustrated with the drivers and him being frustrated with the team. With the team in particular, I mean, Red Bull making the decision to put him on a brand new hard tire. I mean, not the greatest of decisions, but obviously that's all he had to work with. But if you go back within the weekend and the tire allocation and the management of that tire allocation, I mean, he was behind the 8 ball there. I mean, look at what Ferrari did with Charles Leclerc. They held back those new soft tires, a few of them during qualifying, where Leclerc was frustrated with Ferrari for having done that, but he understood that they were trying to prioritize the Grand Prix over qualifying. And look, that new soft tire that they were able to hold back, Charles Leclerc was able to use that, overtake Max Verstappen, and get the podium place. So, I mean, tire allocation was huge in this one, and it really did look like Red Bull may not have managed that very well. And I think also that's a frustration. And then arguing back and forth with his race engineer, Jean-Pierre Lambiase, to give the place back to George Russell. Following the race, we find out that was actually the wrong thing to tell Verstappen about the incident in turn 1. The stewards ruled that Verstappen didn't do anything wrong there, and there was no further action taken. And so he basically could have kept going. Verstappen could have kept going. He didn't have to give the place back to George. And so not only the frustrations with the car, but other drivers, and yes, the team as well on top of all that. And if we just peel that open a little bit more and really sort of dig into how do we think, everything that happened this weekend, how does that affect that relationship between Max and Red Bull Racing? I mean, there have been rumors since the start of the season that Max could leave this team and go somewhere else, like Mercedes, who still haven't locked up George Russell yet. So we'll take you back to Imola, where it did appear that there was some optimism with the car. Red Bull had brought some updates to their car, and it really did look like it worked. There wasn't a lot of overheating with the tires. They're able to get on top of the car a lot more, and Verstappen was extremely confident and aggressive, and he had a great move on Oscar Piastri down into turn 1, and he could do a lot more with the car than he could in other races. And yes, the track may have suited the car a little bit more, but it really did appear like Red Bull was onto something with this car. He didn't seem as frustrated with it as he normally has this season. And like I said, it sounded like Red Bull really figured some stuff out there. But then you fast forward to Spain, and on Thursday, Verstappen coming in and saying that he doesn't really feel like he's in this championship battle. He's not that far off. At the time of saying that, he wasn't that far off of Oscar Piastri, who is leading the championship. And to me, when I hear that, I'm like, well, that's very odd, because if you go all the way back to Imola, things were, perfect, and the car looked like it was, turning a bit of a corner. Monaco was a bit of a struggle, but I think that was always going to be hard for Red Bull at Monaco. And coming into a track like Spain, that it did look like that's a track that probably should have suited Red Bull's race car. So then when you go back into this race weekend and the frustrations that Max was having with the car, you could hear him over the radio voicing those frustrations. And that leads me to think that, maybe this car obviously is just not that great, and it needs a lot of work. And whether or not that work can come within this season, I think is the main question. And it feels like things are really starting to boil over again at this team. I mean, clearly there had been frustrations at this team for quite some time. I mean, if you go back to 2023, this team was winning everything, absolutely steamrolling everybody. Then at the beginning of 2024, there you started to get a fallout between, Christian Horner, Dr. Helmut Marko, Jos Verstappen, and then you saw some key personnel start to leave the team, like Adrian Newey just picks up and leaves. He goes down to Aston Martin. Jonathan Wheatley again, another key employee at that team picks up. He goes down to Sauber to be their team principal. And you start to see the fractures inside the team. And there are also, on top of all that, provisions in Max Verstappen's contract. And motorsport.com reported about this, that those provisions, one in particular is, Max could trigger his out clause if he is outside of the top 4 in the Drivers' Championship standings by the time they get to the Austrian Grand Prix at the end of June. And I think as we get deeper into this season, and if Max doesn't feel like things are turning around with the car or things are turning around with the team themselves, then I think this could lead to, Max looking at maybe going somewhere else later on down the road. It's quite an interesting story to be paying attention to for sure. We're going to have more of this on TSN as the Canadian Grand Prix is up next. We'll have so much more for you on this topic in lead up to the Canada Grand Prix.